You are all welcome. I think we are bang on the top of the hour, so I think it's a very, very good time to start. Good evening again. Welcome to TechBiz. I'm sure you're well. I really hope you're keeping safe. It's nice to know that the cities are open now, but we have to take responsibility and continue to keep safe. So welcome to TechBiz. It's always a nice time on Thursday evenings. Happy to see you all. Thanks for continuing to join. What is important is that the learnings here continue to help you and help your business adapt, recover in the current realities that we're in, and as well to thrive. My name is Doja Ikeruche. You know that already. I'm a strategist experienced in marketing strategy, business management, growing revenue, growing profits as well. And I've done this for many years in different countries of the world. You do know that TechBiz is about helping you believe in possibilities, you as an individual and the entrepreneur in you, to achieve your ambitions. And that's why we always ensure that we are bringing relevant topics, practical discussions that help your business. And that's really the focus of Eco Innovation Center. You know that Eco Innovation Center is about supporting businesses that leverage innovation and technology. The whole focus is to solve poverty and its symptoms within Nigeria and indeed within the continent. So welcome again, hashtag TechBiz, hashtag Eco Innovation. Feel free to post in the chat box anything you want, whether it's question, comments, and insights, feel free to post. I see that some people also help with technology issues. So when other participants cannot hear, you try to help them with how to manage their audio. So thank you for doing that, and feel free to do that again today. Today, I'm really, really excited to share with you one of the recent projects of Eco Innovation Center. So this project is called Lagos Smart Meter, and it's one of our civic tech platforms. And civic tech is about partnering with government to bring solutions that enable broad-based impact. So this Lagos State Smart Meter is in partnership with the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. If you've heard about it, there's been a lot of talk about it, and the governor launched it a few weeks back. And you and I experience power supply issues every single day. And of course, you know, the problem is multidimensional. We cannot say it's one angle. But indeed, electricity distribution is one of the critical problems. When you say that over 60% of Lagosians don't have meters, that in and of itself is adding to the problem. So with the Lagos State Smart Meter project, the whole idea is to have big dreams of how we solve the power situation, but of course, making sure that we bring those dreams to reality by providing access to smart, affordable meters that enable better distribution of electricity, accuracy in power bills, not estimated bills. If you've ever received an estimated bill, you know what I'm talking about. You also get real-time information about your electricity usage. You're able to accurately measure and track the usage of your electricity. That's the whole benefit of smart meter. So now EIC, in partnership with Lagos State government, we launched out a call for applications because we know that we have really, really brilliant minds in Lagos State, right? So the entire tech community, we're reaching out to you to participate in the Lagos State Smart Meter Hackathon. It's about crowdsourcing the solution, because we can always stand around and complain, and we've been complaining for many decades. But now we know that with technology, there's an opportunity to rapidly innovate, but more importantly, to scale. So the drive is that you can submit your proposed hardware, software solutions on a smart meter, and there are guidelines though. So just go to lagossmartmeter.com. I said lagossmartmeter.com. You'd see the parameters that are laid out to join the hackathon. And we encourage you to please join the hackathon. The whole tech community, support it, participate in it, amplify it, because we all need to be part of the solution. And I believe that, you know, this really promises to be going to set a new trajectory for the power sector in Lagos and, of course, indeed, Nigeria. So that's the Lagos Smart Meter Hackathon. You want to know more, you can always email info@ecoicenter.com, or you can go to Lagos Smartmeter techbiz@aderinocare.com, and then there are email addresses there as well that you can reach out to us in case you want to ask any questions. So I'm going to go straight into today's discussion. I can hear some interference there. What's going on? Oof. Okay, fine. I think we found a solution to that. Anyway, so we're going to go into the legal space now, and we're going to talk about why we are having this discussion today. Data protection compliance for techpreneurs and for startups. And we know how relevant this has become today. First, let me welcome Aderonke Alex Adedipe and Sheun Timi Koleolu. Hello, ladies. Welcome.
Hello, Dodger. Thank you. Definitely a pleasure.
Hi, Dodger. Thank you.
You are welcome. In fact, I think I should be the one thanking you. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for offering to share your wealth of knowledge. I'll do a quick introduction of our speakers. Can I already apologize in advance for these interruptions? Because even I cannot hear myself when I hear those feedback. Sorry, guys. So an introduction of the ladies. They are, first let's start with Aderonke. She's a legal practitioner. She has extensive experience advising local and foreign financial institutions. Her scope has covered trade finance, reserve-based lendings, asset acquisitions, other project finance transactions, and she's done this across various sectors. She holds a Bachelor of Laws degree from Obafemi Awolowo University and a Master of Laws degree from George Washington University. She's also a member of the Nigerian Bar Association. Highly experienced, Aderonke, I can't wait to hear from you. And Aderonke is one of the co-founders of Pavestones. Sheun is her partner, also a co-founder, and she started out as a corporate and commercial lawyer. She's worked as an in-house lawyer in former Etisalat, Nigeria, we know that company, and she led a team of lawyers in delivering the award-winning $1.2 billion refinancing and the first major IC outsourcing project in Africa. Of course, as you may imagine, she also holds a Bachelor of Laws degree from University of Warwick and a Master's of Laws degree focusing on corporate and commercial law from the University College London. Of course, she's a member of the Nigerian Bar Association. So both ladies, highly experienced, highly knowledgeable, to take us through this topic today about data protection. We're all, in one way or the other, as entrepreneurs today, we are collecting data. Names, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses. Even when you do basic delivery of food, you are collecting data. So the real thing is there are now policies related to that data that are guiding the usage and the management of that data. And what better time to get ourselves knowledgeable about it, up to date, so that indeed we're working within the space of compliance. And then, of course, we want to believe that that further drives business growth. So ladies, it's over to you. I know you have your content already. The floor is all yours.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dodger, for that really kind introduction. It's, as I said earlier, it's a pleasure to be part of this. I really like what Echo Innovation Center is doing. I think it's really relevant in today's age. Startups need a lot of information, and I say it's really good. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I would take you all on. I'm going to tell you a bit about data protection in Nigeria, and it's a very relevant topic in today's age. Why? Now, today's consumers are looking for experiences over the quality of the goods or the services you're providing. This was predicted by Pine and Gilmore in like 1996 in a Harvard article, that businesses will flourish based on the experience they give consumers rather than just the quality. Consumers want to feel like you care about them. They want you to know them. Even I, as a consumer, if you call me Mr. Sheon, I'll be a bit put off by you. So in delivering your service, you're expected to have some basic understanding of the people that you're delivering it to. And to flourish in today's economy, you need to then provide tailored services to them. Now in Nigeria, this has become even more relevant during the COVID period, because companies that were not really, that were offline became online, because that was the only way they could reach consumers. In going online, or in reaching consumers and trying to tailor your services, you're privy to a lot of data. And utilizing this data well is a good thing, but it's very important that you don't utilize it in a manner that will put your business in trouble. So it's very important that you understand the do's and don'ts under the regulations, Nigerian Data Protection Regulation. I'll give you an example of some experiences I've had that makes it really clear to me that quite a few Nigerians don't really understand that there are laws out there governing the use of data. A few years, or about a year ago, I remember a colleague or a person asking me, a nice gentleman, he said to me, oh, who are the people on your mailing list, Pavestone's mailing list? And he really wanted to help. He said, how many people are you guys reaching? My company, we are privy to about over 50,000, 100,000 data of consumers. I can give it to you. And I, as a lawyer, I was a bit, I was shocked, because he was so relaxed about it and he thought he was doing something nice. And I looked at him and I thought, okay, you're just going to give me data like that. So I think here we're going to discuss if that's allowed. Another example, 2 days ago, I was talking to a client and he said to me, he's not from Nigeria. And he said to me, oh, Shehu, so I'm speaking to my social media consultant. And he said there are not really many, there isn't really a strong data protection law in Nigeria. So we can do a promo to get consumers. And when we do the promo, we can then market to these consumers afterwards. And I thought to myself, no, you can't just do a promo offering people pencil and then begin to market something else to them later. But that's the idea people have, that, oh, it's not a big deal. Let's just use data. Now, I think it's good as we progress. Next slide, please. As we progress in these discussions, firstly, you need to understand what the risks are, as the risks associated with data usage. Why is this a big deal? I think you need to understand that. Now, data usage, or the wrong use of data, is definitely a big deal, because it can lead to identity theft. I'm sure you know fraud. The other day, someone called me claiming he was a bank and he sounded like he was in a market. So how did he get my details? And I'm sure quite a few of us have had those experiences, and you're like, you're a bank and you want more information, sorry. Well, so it can lead to theft. It can lead to credit card counterfeiting. It can lead to general just nuisance, people sharing information that you didn't request for with them. It can also lead to manipulation. Imagine knowing what people are thinking and manipulating things so that you guide them to do what you want them to do. Like the Cambridge Analytica experience. I'm sure we all know what happened with the American elections. There was that whole issue about Cambridge Analytica targeting Facebook users based on information they had about them. So definitely data is gold, and you have to secure gold. If in the wrong hands, it can be used terribly and lead to a lot of issues. So next slide, please. What does Nigeria have in place? Now, you as business owners, you need to understand what the law, you as business owners, or even people even data subjects, you need to understand what Nigerian law says, what is required, what can be done with your data, or what you can do with other people's data. the grand norm, the foundation of Nigerian laws and regulations is the Constitution, and it has been there for a very long time, as you know, and it grants everyone a right to privacy. There is now a recent regulation which is similar to the GDPR in Europe, the General Data Protection Regulation in Europe, and we call it here the NDPR, the Nigeria Data Protection Regulation. It was enacted in 2019. The NDPR protects Nigerians everywhere. It protects data subjects who are based in Nigeria and who are outside Nigeria. If you're using information of Nigerians, even in Russia, you are subject to the NDPR, and you should do it in accordance with the requirements of the NDPR. The NDPR aims to ensure the privacy of all personal data within the database of companies. If you are found to be in breach of the NDPR, you as a business can be fined up to, it says 2 million, but it's actually about 10 million naira. It could be up to 10 million naira and 1% annual global, or 1% of your annual global turnover, whichever is greater. Can we please move to the next slide? And I guess you should know that the regulatory authority that is in charge of ensuring that you comply with the NDPR is the National Information Technology Development Agency. So as we go along in this presentation, there are some key phrases that you should understand. And these are very important key phrases in the context of data protection. Personal data. Personal data is what the NDPR tries to protect. It is any information relating to an individual that can be used directly or indirectly to identify this person. It could be their name, their email address, their social media account, IMEI number, just any information that can guide you to a person. Who is a data controller? The data controller is a person who decides the purpose for which the data is to be used. Is the person who collects your data for a purpose and tells you why he's collecting your data. Who is a data processor? And I'll give you a practical experience to put this in context. The data processor is any person who processes data on behalf of a data controller. And then the data subject is you and also myself whenever we are wearing the hats of consumers. So an example, Amazon, Konga. You as a consumer, when you want to buy something from Amazon or Konga, you put in your details, your name, your email address, and whatever else they ask for. When you put in those details, Konga or Amazon, they become the data controller because you have given them the details so you can buy things and you can use their service. But they work with third-party merchants. When they share your information with a third-party merchant so that he can provide that good to you, he's the data processor. He's the person who has been given the right to use your information to deliver whatever you have requested for. So he's the data processor. And then you are the data subjects. I hope that is clear. Now, the NDPR, there are 6 principles which are like pillars. I don't think people can see the slide. Can we reduce it? So there are 6 principles which they are the pillars for the NDPR. And if you understand these principles and you conduct your business with this in mind, you can be sure that you are definitely not in breach of the NDPR. So I'll take you through these principles, after which Aderonke will take over and talk you through the rest of the presentation. The first principle is lawfulness. transparency and fairness. You as a data controller or as a business, you need to ensure that whatever purpose for which you collect data is lawful. You cannot collect data for fraud, please. And I'm sure nobody's doing that, but just in case. You also need to ensure that you are transparent with your consumers as to why you're collecting the data. You can't tell them that you're collecting data to give them some freebies, but you then use it to do so much more or sell it to third parties. You have to be transparent. Accuracy. When you collect data, you need to ensure that the information you keep is correct. It's not okay to put in data on your database and put in the wrong information. Data subjects have a right to request that you correct the information on your system. It needs to be accurate. Storage limitation. You are only to collect data, personal information, only for the required period of time, for whatever period of time is required to ensure you can achieve that purpose. You're not allowed to have data just on your computer forever. You need to realize that it's an asset and it should be kept as such, and only deleted when not required. There are certain regulations and laws that actually require certain companies to keep data for a period of time, like in the telco space. The Nigerian Communications Commission requires you to keep data for about 7 years. If that's required, you need to adhere to that requirement. The data you keep should be kept in a secure location. You need to ensure that it's secure. And I assume this answers a question that was sent on cybersecurity. So data protection is not the same, it's not cybersecurity, but cybersecurity is embedded in it. It's one of the principles. You need to ensure that data is kept on a secure database and you do whatever is required to reduce the risk of it being shared with the general public, to reduce a breach. So you encrypt it, you protect it. If it's not necessary for the whole company to have access to the data, you can restrict it to certain levels. So that's the way you protect the data you're holding. Accountability is another principle. Data controllers, so the example I gave earlier, Amazon or Conga, the data controller remains accountable to the regulator for how the data is being used and will remain responsible, will be held responsible if there's a breach of the law. Even if it's given to a third party, the person who collects the data remains accountable to regulators. And then confidentiality. If it's been given to you for a purpose, you're not to share it with every third party, every Tom, Dick, and Harry. It has to be maintained, kept as private. Now, the next, I'm going to, Aderonke is going to talk you through the rest of our presentations. My very capable and wonderful partner, Ronke, over to you.
Okay, thank you. I was muted for a split second there. Thank you, everyone. So I am going to be speaking about how businesses can comply with data. And I'm also going to be talking very briefly about the rights of data subjects in Nigeria. I believe my partner, Shion, has been able to identify who data subjects are. I will start by identifying two very important participants under the NDPR as far as data protection is concerned. We have the data protection officer, who is basically employed by organizations using data. And what the law requires is that for every organization that processes data of individuals within a particular bracket, and I think Sheon had mentioned that during her presentation. So if you process data of over 1,000 people within a period of 6 months, or you process data of over 2,000 people within a period of 12 months, then you are required to comply with the provisions of the NDPR. And one of the requirements is to ensure that in-house you have somebody, an officer referred to as the data protection officer. The data protection officer is your compliance officer, just like you have a compliance officer within a financial institution who ensures that all the regulations, banking regulations, are complied with, and who is also answerable to the regulatory body. So the DPO is in charge of ensuring that the company handles data and processes data effectively and in accordance with the NDPR. The DPO is also answerable to NITDA. So if NITDA has any questions regarding how the company is processing their data, or they require clarification on anything that has to do with data processing within the company, the DPO is answerable. The DPO is also required to report any security breach. Some people argue that there's a conflict of interest there, because how do you report the company for which you work? But under the law, it is actually a requirement that if there has been a breach, it is your obligation as the DPO to report that security breach to NITDA. Also, the DPO maintains record of data. The DPO is responsible for enlightening everybody within the organization, for training other officers. So, for example, you have HR officials who handle data of employees. They collect personal data of employees, their names, their addresses, their next of kin, their telephone numbers, and all of that information. So it's the obligation of the DPO to ensure that that data is being processed in accordance with the provisions of the NDPR. Now, one of the very key functions of the DPO is also to conduct something we call the DPIA, which is the Data Protection Impact Assessment. The Data Protection Impact Assessment is not done every time, but is done under certain circumstances. So, for example, I'm going to give you a very quick example here. So let's say that a healthcare facility wants to change the way they process the data of their patients, assuming that they ordinarily use a desktop to process data of their patients, and they decide that, using a desktop is no longer efficient. It doesn't make our work fast. We can't process data as effectively as we should. There's now a new app that, it's a mobile app that is functional on mobile phones. So going forward, we're going to be using mobile phones to process data of our patients. Now, before that organization goes forward to say, okay, this is how we're going to proceed, it is the obligation of the DPO to assess the risk of using that technology to process the data. It is also the obligation of the DPO to identify the possible impact on the data subject in the event that there is a breach. So using the mobile phone as an example, most likely the mobile phone will not be stored in the office, unlike a desktop, which is obviously stagnant. So if your data, people within the organization are processing data of patients who come to the health facility and they carry the mobile phone outside the office, obviously the risk of the data leaking becomes higher. Now, if there are no security features on that phone, or the security features can be jailbroken very easily, the risk again becomes higher. Now, if, for example, your patients are, or the patients of the hospital are HIV patients, and their information leaks to the general public, the potential impact on the data subjects, it could be a mental damage, and it could also lead to reputational damage. So those are things that the data protection officer will assess in under the DPIA, and then he would advise the company that these are measures that we can take to mitigate the effect of this risk and this potential damage before they go ahead to change the way that data is being processed. Next slide, please. Okay, and then the second very important agent of compliance is the DPCO, which is the Data Protection Compliance Organization. The Data Protection Compliance Organization is more or less an auditor. So I think as of today in Nigeria, we have about 50 DPCOs who have been licensed by NITDA to conduct audits and to carry out, basically they act as agents of NITDA to conduct audits and to ensure and report compliance or non-compliance of organizations using data. Now, what exactly is the role of the DPCO in conducting audits? The DPCO will generally go to an organization if they have been appointed to come and conduct an audit. Go to an organization, they want to know how data is being collected. They want to know how data is being processed. They want to understand how data is being kept. The DPCO wants to know why data is even being collected in the first place. If that data is being transferred to third parties for any reason whatsoever, they want to know the length or the period of time for which the data is stored. They want to know how your data is stored, if there are adequate security measures depending on the nature of the data and how the data is being used. They want to know if all of that is being done. Now, whether or not that is being done will be determined by the audit. After the audit has been completed, what happens is your DPCO then identifies, they prepare a report, an audit report, and submits it to NITDA. One of the requirements for you to, meet under the NDPR is to always have either a biannual or annual audits, depending on the amount of data that you process as an organization. So you have to have that audit conducted by a licensed DPCO. So after that audit has been completed and submitted to NITDA, what then happens is the DPCO can identify gaps, review perhaps your privacy policies, which I'm going to talk about in one of my next slides, review how, your data is being processed and whether there are any gaps that need to be addressed. And then they offer a remediation, they offer trainings to your staff handling data, and basically advice on compliance going forward. Next, please. Now, before you can process data, before you can collect and process data of data subjects under the NDPR, there are 5 major principles, or perhaps there are 5 major bases for which you can collect that data. So without meeting any of these requirements, you are not allowed as an organization to collect any of this data. And one of such is consent. I'm going to talk about consent extensively in my next slide because a lot of platforms that we use, everyday platforms that we use, marketing platforms, retail platforms where we do our shopping, consent is quite prominent. It's one of the major bases for which organizations collect data. Public interest occurs when data is processed or collected on behalf of a government agency for public interest, basically, as the caption suggests. Now, I'm going to give you a very quick example. Sometime last year, the LIRS asked employers to request employees to log on to their website to provide certain, and in my opinion, very sensitive data, your BVN, your bank account details, and stuff like that. Now, as a government agency or as a regulatory agency, as one of the bases upon which they have collected that data is to ensure that they can do their job effectively and tax negotiations effectively. So that falls under public interest. Contractual necessity arises when you have a contract. So basically, you already have a contract. I'll give another example. Almost everybody on this platform, I believe, operates a bank account. So several of the forms that you feel more or less constitute a contract between yourself as a data subject and the banks. And then the bank says, oh, in order for us to better serve you as our customer, we have to enter into a form of contract with a third party, maybe a tech service provider, to build an application or to build a platform whereby through which we can continue to provide services to you. So provided that the purpose for which the organization or the financial institution is processing that data is in line with the original purpose, which is to provide services to you, then contractual necessity can be successfully argued as one of the bases. Legal obligations, that arises when, for example, you have a court order, maybe you have a case in court, or you have a case in court and you want to prove criminal negligence or criminal liability, and then the court issues a subpoena against MTN to say, okay, pull out, we need to check the call records or the call log of this defendant to really see whether you have a case or not, or the police want to investigate some form of fraud. That is a legal obligation. Vital interest arises when there is a medical or life-threatening incident. So, for instance, somebody is traveling on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. The person has an accident. The person is immobile, cannot speak, and the only way that the FIRS can contact the person's immediate family members is to maybe pull out the person's ID card or pull out the person's purse and then find information relating to that person. Maybe the person's next of kin the details is somewhere in the wallet, or the person is in the hospital and the hospital has never treated this person before. The person doesn't have medical records of the person, but for some reason, the hospital is able to get hold of the information, maybe through searching through the person's bag, and then the hospital has to quickly give blood to the person because if the person is already on the verge of death, that is a vital interest. So the patient cannot turn around 21 days after to say, oh, but why did you go and process my data? Why did you go into my bag to find out whether I'm O positive or A negative? So that is a vital interest. Next slide, please. Okay, so talking again about consent. I had said before that consent is one of the major bases for which organizations collect personal data. Now, in collecting or processing personal data on the basis of consent, organizations have to be very careful. Consent must be clearly stated. It must be unambiguous, and it requires an affirmative action. An example of an affirmative action is saying, yes, I consent, or writing down, I consent. But if I haven't done any of that, and maybe there's just a form that says, oh, if you go ahead, you consent to, that does not comply with the principles of the NDPR. You must actually take an action that shows that you have consented to me processing your data. And one very critical example is if you go on a website, there are certain retail websites who do this. If you go on that website, there's a box, maybe there are two boxes. There's one on top that might say, I consent to using XYZ. There's usually a very long terms and conditions, which nobody ever cares to read. And they're always in very fine print. So there's usually that. And then at the bottom of the box, at the bottom of that same box, there's also another box that says, I do not consent. Now, if the consent box, the one that says I consent, is already pre-ticked and you just go over it and you move on, that does not constitute consent under the NDPR because there has been no affirmative action on the part of the data subjects. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to be talking about the rights of, sorry, I think you went over the previous slide. Can you? Okay, yes. So one very important part of complying with data protection regulations is in fact, it's impossible for you to not have a privacy policy if you are processing data of individuals. And your privacy policy is like the life, is like the bane of your compliance. So your privacy policy is basically, again, I use example of websites where you have terms and conditions. For more information, please click our privacy policy. Most people don't read it. Or for more information, read our terms and conditions. Most people don't read it. I, as a matter of fact, I'm guilty of that because nobody has time to actually sit down to start reading fine print. But anyway, your privacy policy must state the basis for collecting data. As Sheon said previously, you can't collect data for the purpose of marketing or for the purpose of selling to third parties, and then you are lying to people that you are collecting their data just so that you can be giving them freebies. It is not permitted. You have to let your data subjects know the type of data that you're keeping and the reason for keeping that data, how the data is being stored and processed, how the data subjects can come around and complain if they feel that their rights have been breached, if it's going to be transferred to third parties, either by way of affiliates or unrelated parties, you are supposed to inform the data subjects. I'll give you another example. This happened with Facebook, I think it was a couple of years ago, whereby Facebook was being accused of using the data of Facebook users so they would ask you for your personal information, you would upload it and put it onto the Facebook application or whatever. And then Facebook was basically giving out that information for free to companies that were related to them. And they were sued in the United States for that reason. That is one of, excuse me, that is one of the grounds upon which a data protection can be held liable. An organization can be held liable for breach of data protection. Again, you have to state how the data is going to be protected and how long it will be kept for. It cannot be kept in perpetuity. Next slide, please. What are the rights of a data subject? As a data subject, you have a right to access your data. So if I've supplied data to you at some point, I have the right to come around and say, oh, I want to have access to my data. I have a right, if I feel like there's an error or there's something that needs to be corrected. Another example is a bank. You have done a change of name or you have recently gotten married. You have a right to go to the bank and say, oh, that's my name that was on there before. It's no more my official name. So please, I want to change that about me and I need that to be reflected accurately. You have a right to be forgotten. This, of course, does not apply in all cases. You have a right to say, hey, that data that I've given to you, please remove it. I don't want you to keep it anymore. But when data is collected or processed in compliance with a legal obligation, for example, or for the purpose of investigating a criminal matter, you can't go around and say and tell the police to destroy your data because there's a legal obligation on them. You have the right to restrict unlawful processing. You find out that MTN has been sending you all sorts of messages on several bonanzas, different things, different applications. You have a right to tell them or to unsubscribe and say, I was never a part of this or I never consented to this. Please stop sending me, stop using my data for this purpose, because this is not the reason why I gave you my information. The reason I gave you my information is because I just wanted to buy a SIM card from you. And you never disclosed that you will be selling marketing materials to me. So it is unlawful. Please don't send me that kind of information anymore. You have a right to. Right not to be profiled. Again, an example is, so when you're shopping online, you tend to see a pop-up that says, oh, this website uses cookies. Nobody ever reads them. Now, what do cookies really do on a retail website? For the most part, they basically tell you, they basically try to understand your shopping habits as a user of the platform. And so, for example, I buy an iPhone on Amazon. There is a tendency that a couple of days after, I would receive an alert, maybe on my Amazon account or in my email, that says, you might like this, which is maybe an iPhone case. And then 3 days later, I'm now getting, oh, this is on sale, you might like this. That could be an iPhone protector or an iPhone charger. So basically, that's what cookies do. They profile you, they understand your shopping pattern for those kind of organizations. They understand your habits, and then they use it as a marketing tool. So you have a right to not consent to using the cookies, or to the cookies not popping up on your laptop. Next slide, please. Okay, because Georgia had said that we could only have 10 slides. I didn't include this last portion, but please just give me a couple of minutes to say this. Now, I think one very prominent question for most Nigerians is, okay, at the end of the day, there's the NDPR, but what happens as a data subject if my rights has been breached? Of course, the NDPR has provisions for you to submit any complaints to NITDA. Now, I think one of the major shortfalls of the NDPR is, while NITDA has the power to fine an organization who is found to be in breach, the NDPR does not go further to state what remedies are available to data subjects. So what then happens is, in that case, people also have the right to go to court and say, hey, my data, my rights as a data subject, or my right to privacy has been breached. They did not follow NDPR. These organizations did not follow NDPR. They did not comply. And that's that. I think two very prominent cases in recent times are the one against LIRS, because apparently when LIRS requested sensitive information from employees sometime last year, there was a breach because the information became available to members of the general public. And then basically anybody who had access to the website at that point could actually see names of people, their income, their monthly income, and information, confidential information like that. So I know that matter is in court. There's also another case against the CBN, because the CBN recently issued a directive saying that banks should share information of their customers with fintech companies. So I think for the most part, the NDPR is still fresh. It's still in its early days, and everyone is waiting to see the results of those cases. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ronke. Thanks, Emil Shion. We already have a very busy chat group. If you've been looking through it, Shion, lots of discussions and questions as well. There's that point on compliance, which is where or enforcement actually, which is where you are actually basically rounding off on. And Oluwaseyi had asked, even with NITDA and NDPR, there have been constant occurrences of data breaches, which shows an ineptitude on their part. How can individuals play a cautious role in data protection, and extending further, how corporate bodies and the above institutions improve in data protection delivery?
Okay, that's that's a very good question, and I think based on the slides which we have taken you through, you should have a better understanding of the requirements to ensure that you're protecting data. Each individual who has access to data is responsible for ensuring that they get the right consent, they use it, they secure data when it's with them. They only keep it as long as necessary. It shouldn't, and don't try to sell it to anyone. And then obviously our regulators, data protection in Nigeria is fairly new. To be honest, it's obviously we're trying to get a bit more sterner with that. So our regulators are learning, and there's actually a new regulation which is targeted at public institutions. So apart from the NDPR, there's one that is for public institutions, holding them to a high standard in ensuring that they protect data. So I think with time, it will get better, but each one of us need to be responsible for ensuring that we protect data of consumers in our purview.
Thank you, Shewan. You're absolutely correct. I mean, this is an excellent platform to understand what the policy says, and it behoves you to comply, with that policy. We may say today that the enforcement is not happening, but you don't want to be on the wrong side of the law, and that's a fact. Thank you, Shewan.
Say that again.
Remember you had referenced that the telcos, the duration, the law says they have a duration to keep your data for 7 years. What is the duration for an online store like Jumia?
Okay, to the best of my knowledge, there isn't a duration that is a statutory duration. So for an online store like Jumia, they would just need to ensure that they only keep it for as long as is required. Data which you collected to service a particular consumer or customer who is trying to buy something from you, and then that customer leaves or opts out of your service a few years later, you can't then continue to keep their data and share information with them. So I think there's a level of wisdom that should go into that, because you're going to prove to the regulators, they would have to prove to regulators that their use of it was required if they ever called into question.
I think just to add to what Sheon just said, like she said, it's not, so NDPR does not specifically say that you should keep data for a period of time. It only says that the length of time for which you keep it should be reasonable. So you should only keep it for as long as you need it. It's unreasonable for you to keep data of somebody who has shopped with you maybe 10 years ago, that sort of thing. However, for specific industries, some specific industries like the telcos and like banking, their own regulators actually require you to keep data for specific periods. Because I know that for banking, I think it's 10 years or thereabouts. So yeah, I just wanted to add that point.
Thank you. Thanks, Ronke. Omotola is asking, how can organizations get the services of DPCO? If you want your organization to be audited in compliance with NDPR, how would you go about it?
Okay.
Okay, go on, Shu. Go on.
With any of us. So actually, there's a list of DPCOs on the NIDA website, and Pavestones is a licensed DPCO. So just a few organizations have been licensed by the regulators as DPCOs, and we are one of them, Pavestones Legal. If you want your company audited, you just need to reach out to us, and we will be glad to do that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Nothing? Okay, good.
Okay, excellent. So someone will be, we don't have a name here, will be grateful to get some guidance as to how well, if at all, the NDPR is being implemented or enforced by NITDA. So you actually referenced it slightly earlier when you talk about enforcement and how there's a learning by doing going on right now. And,
Okay, let me just say one thing I can tell you that has happened in the past 1 year since the regulation has come into force. I think what NITDA is really trying to do is to be in touch with reality, because they believe that rather than just require organizations to tick the box and just go ahead and prepare audits just because they don't want to be fined, they are taking steps to enlighten people, right? Because obviously, a lot of companies, even to date, don't understand what is required of them. So it will be a bit unfair for you to just come up with a law and then start enforcing and start saying, oh, you've breached this, you've breached that. A lot of people are not even aware of their requirements to comply, which is also another reason why they have appointed licensed DPCOs. So the licensed DPCOs are actually acting as agents on behalf of NITDA. So not only are you conducting audits, you're also training companies. You're also training DPOs, people within organizations who are handling data. And which is why, as DPCOs, we have come on this platform to enlighten people. So basically, it's the obligation of DPCOs as well to enlighten organizations about the state of the law and how it applies to them.
And thank you for that enlightenment drive, especially because exactly what you said at the beginning, life has moved online. And even the smallest of businesses is online and collecting multiple layers of data. So awareness is extremely critical, at this point. Ekaret was asking about data backup. How ethical is data backup regarding storage limits and storing your data in the cloud or other data hosting sites? How ethical is that?
Okay, so the law is that you can actually back up in another country, because most of the cloud services are based in other countries, although we have good ones now. I think Main One provides one, and there are some other ones locally in Nigeria. But the law is that if you're going to store some data outside Nigeria, such countries would have to have data protection regulations that are at least at par with our NDPR or better. So obviously you don't back up data in a country where they don't even have data protection laws. That will be in breach of the regulation.
Thank you.
So
And you give an example earlier about, sorry, as an aside, please. Guys, if you want to ask your question verbally, just raise your hand and we'll unmute you so you can speak and we can actually have a conversation. That's always very nice. So you talked about someone who offered you his own organization's data. Mm-hmm. And you and I know that is happening big time today, right? Which is we're sharing our customer data for whatever reason, whether we are partners in a different industry or even we have a large group, there's a conglomerate. And then who is the one collecting the data maybe is the food sector, right? And then it's sharing that data with, let's say, the telco sector. Those kinds of, are those violations? And those kinds of violations, how do you, navigate in that space? Because I can always argue we're members of the same larger group.
So definitely, now, I think what should have come out from the discussion we had is that if you're going to use data, they has to have been consented to. You have to have the consent of the customer or the consumers to use their data. And you have to be transparent with it. So you need to have gotten consent for every single thing you are going to use the data for. If you're going to share it with, you're a bank and you're going to share it with telco, you should have said it in your policy, in the terms and conditions, and that should have been accepted. And as Aderonke had said earlier, it's not enough for you to tick a box already and just assume that it's accepted. And if the consumer doesn't opt out, then you just do what you want. That's what people used to do in the past. But the regulators are being really, they're taking that seriously. It's not allowed. You need to ensure that people consent to whatever you're going to use it for. So to answer your question, I hope it's not, people are not permitted to collect data for a purpose and then sell it to a third party without the knowledge of the data subject. It's not permitted under the law. And if a DPCO comes in and carries out an audit and that is found, that will be an issue. But I wouldn't scare people now because this because this audit concept is new in Nigeria. What NIGDA is doing at this point is just hitting people, tapping them a bit and saying, that's not allowed, and trying to guide people. Yes, there's a penalty, but they're trying not to scare people away. At this point, what we're doing as DPCOs is helping you, guiding you and advising you on what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, and then training you so that you are enlightened going forward.
So we're not yet in the US space where Facebook was fined $5 billion for sharing data with Cambridge Analytica. You gave that example at the beginning. You know, when you register on Facebook, or even you put your political preferences, and then Cambridge Analytica used that during the campaign of Donald Trump, and that became a big issue for Facebook. But anyway, we're not in that space yet. Uche is asking, Shane, are you there? Okay, but okay, you're here. Excellent. Yeah. So what extent does the law provide protection for data processors in the event of a hack, especially if the hacked data has high impact on the data subjects?
Well, let me just say that first and foremost, the essence of the NDPR really is to protect the data subjects, not necessarily the data processors. It actually places an obligation on you. So depending on the nature of data that you process as a processor, you can identify, and which is why I mentioned the DPO in the first instance. Your DPO is required, just one moment, I have something popping up. Yeah, your DPO is required to mention that, your DPO is required to identify the kind of security measures that need to be put in place, depending on the nature of the data that you keep and that you store and how you store that data. So the obligation is actually on the data processors to ensure the highest level of security measures. The NDPR doesn't actually protect you as the organization or the data processor. It protects the data subjects.
Right, thank you. We're really eager to hear other people's voices. Can you raise your hand if you want to ask a question? That would be very nice, okay? So another question Shegun is asking, but I think the question has been answered, but anyway, I'll ask it again. Had a project with government quite recently, and they insisted that the data had to be stored in the country. Is anything being done to clarify this information error?
Well, the preference of Nigerian government is that the data is stored in the country. And if obviously most companies will have a backup, and if you're backing up, then it should be out of the country. There was a regulation in the past, the data protection guidelines then, which actually didn't have the force of law, had stated clearly that you can't host data out of Nigeria. But it wasn't practical because at that point, there were not a lot of companies that had the facility in Nigeria for people to host data. So it was almost like you're saying, do this, but we don't have the facility to do that, the infrastructure. At this point, there are some companies that have seen the need and they have their facility. And I know Main One, I think BCX, there are a few companies that are providing that service. So our government's preference is that you do that. But as I said, backing up out of the country is permitted if it's a country with suitable regulations that are at least up to the same standard as the NDPR.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah. There's one part that we may want to know, which is about examples, right? Any examples of data breaches yet that have been caught? I know you said that a few of them are just taps on the wrist. Is there any that we know that has had impact?
Okay, so what I would say is, so far, based on discussions we've had as DPCOs with the regulators, we've been told there are some in progress right now. It's not out there. They haven't yet gone through the full court process, but there are some companies that are currently have been taken to court by the regulators. And I guess with time we'll find out what's happened, what if they were found guilty. So yes, there are companies that have been held, that have been seen to be in breach or are currently being undergoing court cases, but it's not out there, it's not public knowledge.
So in terms of employees, right, and I know you mentioned it earlier when you were presenting, which is employees who do not have direct roles that have interaction with data should ordinarily not have access to that data. Now, what if they do, and then they leave the company and take that data away? So in real terms, the company did what they ought to do, but one of the employees became renegade and then sold the data and now using the data for a different purpose versus what the data subjects consented to. In that situation, who's liable?
Can I say something? Can I respond to that?
Please.
So again, the NDPR, right? It targets organizations, not individuals, in terms of who is responsible. So in that case, as an organization that is in charge of processing data, the obligation is on you to ensure that when employees are leaving the company, they don't go away with data, right? They don't go away with data. Now, if you figure out, or at some point you then realize that, oh, this person stole the data or hacked into the system or just happened to, everything that we put in place to make sure that data is not stolen from us has been beaten just because this person used to be an employee, those security measures have been beaten, then it is the obligation of the DPO to go and report to NITDA that there has been a data breach. But in terms of liability, NITDA would generally not hold that person liable because it doesn't regulate individuals in terms of in terms of responsibilities.
Thanks. Marianne, you have the floor.
Yes, good evening. So my question is what the position of the NDPR is regarding the use of algorithms by financial service industry. And maybe to drive home my question, I had an experience early this year. I got a message from one of the financial service providers asking me to compel one of their customers who borrowed money from them to pay them. So I was curious, wanting to know if I was a guarantor to the customer because I wasn't aware. So they told me that the customer took a loan from them, and from their algorithm, based on information the customer gave to them, they got my contacts on his phone because I think it was an application that had to be downloaded on the customer's phone. And then I wrote them saying that I think this is absolutely wrong. You can't take my information without my consent, and you're reaching out to me. So they give an explanation surrounding use of algorithms, which I was not satisfied with, but then I didn't proceed with it. I just wanted to know what is the position of the law regarding that kind of occurrence, because I've heard this happen to two other persons that I know. So are they allowed to just use the algorithm to access information of unsuspecting Nigerians and just send them messages for something they had nothing to do with? Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne. Okay, over to you.
Okay. First of all, you didn't say whether you banked with that financial institution or not. So I'm not quite sure how it is they got your details. But this is me assuming that they got your details using quote and unquote algorithm. Now, if we look at the 5 bases that I had described for which you can collect and process data of individuals in Nigeria, it is unlawful because you haven't given them your data, You haven't given them consent to use your data. There is no legitimate basis or public interest involved. There's no legal basis. There's no vital interest. So if you look at those 5 principles or those 5 bases, it doesn't fall within. So you actually have the right to report to NITDA and for NITDA to investigate that breach.
Exactly. She said she didn't bank with them, and truly, it's definitely a breach. It's illegal. Now, ladies, I think the team, our participants are quite satisfied with all the information that you have provided, because we don't have any more questions. But I would like for you to announce what you kindly are offering, so that we can get our participants further educated within this space. Okay, you want to do that, or Sheon?
I'm going to let Sheon do that.
Okay.
Okay, so in gratitude of you joining this conversation today, we at Pavestones, we're offering you a free review of your privacy policy if you have one. And if you don't have one, we will draft one for you. But we're offering 3 participants who are to be randomly picked by our wonderful host.
That's really like tossing the ball back my way. Okay, yeah. But really, thank you very much. That is quite a generous offering. And I think that, privacy policy, indeed extremely critical, but a lot of us don't even have it, or we've drafted something really, extremely basic. So it's kind of you to offer that. And then as well, if you have if you already have a policy, Ronke and Sheon will help review. And if you don't have, they will be drafted. So actually, the team has made it very easy. Already 3 people. So Morenike Kende, you are the very first one to raise your hand. So that's excellent. We pick you as well. Samuel Adu, let me not murder your name, but Samuel as well. And Uche. So I just followed exactly in order of first come, first serve. Samuel, Uche, and Morenike. So those will be the 3 individuals who you will support their businesses. And Morenike, I really hope that this is a business. So, the 3 of you, at least the 3 people who we have identified, please make sure that you have a business, because the whole essence is to support business and your entrepreneurship endeavor. I think that's, Morenike, excellent. Please send in your email address privately to me. Samuel, send your email privately to me, and Uche, please do the same thing. Quickly, we have a poll. I think we started running the poll. It's in progress right now. If you could please vote so that we get your feedback, always very important. It helps us not only tailor our content, it also helps us as well to ensure that our speakers, of course, are delivering relevant content. Joshua, you're asking about the slides. The slides are available at www.ecoicenter.com/webinar. The slides will be there. The video for the webinar also will be available there. Thank you so much. Thank you, Stewart. You said the presentation was amazing. Stewart, you're also an amazing human being, and I'm sure your business is amazing as well. Thank you. We'll stop the poll at 2 minutes. So we have exactly 1 minute to go. Please vote. So far we have 22 votes. So we're still waiting for 20 more. Please vote. Don't worry, the vote is anonymous. Correct, I see you're asking if we're going to use your data for the poll. Now everybody's data sensitive. So please vote, don't worry, it's anonymous. Go ahead, more people vote, please. 30 seconds to go. While we're voting, please, Ronke, Sheon, is there something that we should have talked about that we didn't talk about?
From my end, I think we covered it.
Yeah. I made sure I covered everything, even though
Yeah.
some of the things were not in my slides.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ladies. And we're really having positive feedback, so much enlightenment, enjoying the session. Abinke, this is your first time of joining TechBiz. Thanks for joining, and we're glad you enjoyed it. It's 2 minutes already, a little past, so that's it. We end the polling, and thank you very much for everyone who's voted. We really appreciate your feedback because your feedback helps us to improve. We're rounding off right now. We've learned about the data policies. We have learned about compliance. We've learned about the kind of officers that we need to appoint within our organization. Of course, we have also learned about privacy policy, extremely critical to ensure that we have it. Every one of us is collecting data. A co-innovation center is collecting a lot of data from the various events and various platforms that we have, and TechBiz being one of that. But we are committing to you a full compliance to of course, the policy. Thank you, Sheung. Thank you, Ronke. We will continue to reach out to you for support with our participants and for all of the teams on the call. I hope I'm sure, I don't even hope, I'm sure you have learned, and I'm sure that there's a lot that you're taking away to help your business thrive. And by this time next week, we'll be connecting again on a different subject. I see that the team wants to hear about networking, extremely critical, and we'll do what we can to make sure that we bring a speaker, whether next week or in the subsequent weeks, talking about networking. Thank you so much, TechBiz squad. Thank you. Have a lovely evening. And again, please continue to keep safe. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.